This is a podcast by the News Minute, and you are listening to South Central.
Hello and welcome to South Central, a TNM podcast where we put the South at the center. I am Dhanya, Rajendran, your host. Remember, a new episode of South Central drops every Friday. You can like us on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify and other apps. And remember to spread the word. Tell others if you like South Central and if you do give it a listen during the weekend. We'll first discuss the union government's reluctance to accept the report on Keezhadi. And then we look at the Sonam Raghuvanshi story and the angle that's not being talked about. Joining me here in the studio is my co-host Pooja Prasanna, the anchor of Let Me Explain. Pooja, your last Let Me Explain was on a cow vigilante, and I saw that the comment section was either people being like, how can you not protect cows, or the second one's being very good work, Pooja.
Actually, that's the story of my life these days. There's a pattern. People either love Let Me Explain or they hate it, they abuse, they threaten. But as long as I'm making people think, I'm happy.
Joining us from the Chennai studio is Sivapriyan ETB. Sivapriyan is Assistant Editor, Tamil Nadu for the Deccan Herald. Shiva, welcome to South Central. Do you watch Let Me Explain? Do you hate it or love it?
Stop putting him in a spot.
Let Me Explain is one of the best explainers I've seen, like from the beginning, like when Anna used to host and then now Pooja has taken over from her. It's one of the best things that I watch on TNM YouTube.
It's almost like at gunpoint we are making you say this.
But I want to also say that we have not given him any threats or bribes to say this.
Yeah. So Sivapriyan is a journalist with almost 20 years of experience across multiple media houses. He's worked with newspapers, news agencies, and television channels. He started his career as a sub-editor in 2005. He doubled up as a reporter in both Deccan Chronicle and PTI. He's worked in Chennai and New Delhi, and he's been a full-time reporter since 2011. During these years, he's covered a range of topics including politics, arts, culture, archaeology, and is one of the most trusted journalists from the state of Tamil Nadu. Very happy to have you on the show, Sivapriyan.
Thank you, Dhanya. It's my pleasure to be on this show.
Okay, so before we go to the headlines, I want to tell our audience about two stories that you should definitely read. A few months ago, that is the beginning of the year, we had published a story on the manosphere. How Indian teens are getting drawn into the manosphere. They're being influenced not just by international manosphere heroes like Andrew Tate, but there are also local ones. In fact, we got a huge reception for that story because a lot of parents were actually unaware that this was happening with their kids in classrooms, that kids are addicted to Andrew Tate and others. This month, we have published part 2 of that series. Lakshmi Priya has written on misogyny, manosphere, and the making of India's religious extremists. So the story takes it further as to once a teenager is drawn into the manosphere. Now, the manosphere, the whole thing is not bad, but there's a section of manosphere which believes that women are the villains in everything and anything, and that men are the victims. And in many of these cases, these people get drawn to religious extremism. Andrew Tate himself is someone who said he converted to Islam. So Lakshmi Priya tells you in detail about Andrew Tate, his conversion to Islam, what's happening in India, who are the preachers here of Hindutva, of Islam, and even Christianity. Do read that story. It is behind a paywall. And like I keep telling you every week, it's just 500 rupees a month, and you get to read all the stories behind paywall, and of course, support us. In fact, Lakshmi Priya's story is not the only one behind paywall. We have one more. This is about BJP leader JP Nadda, BJP President JP Nadda. This is about how JP Nadda has had a stupendous growth in the BJP over the last few decades. But along with JP Nadda, his wife's NGO also rose. So the story looks at his growth in Himachal Pradesh to Delhi, and also how his family-run NGO called Chetana Sansthan, which is headed by his wife Mallika, also grew substantially from 2014. It received over 4 crores in CSR funding. Do read these two stories. It is behind a paywall. Pooja, to the headlines.
Also, just on that JP Nadda profile, this is at a time when so many NGOs have been forced to shut down. This is one NGO that's performed really well. Now, looking at the headlines, I start with the Air India update. Thrust not achieved, falling Mayday. These were the pilot's final words before the Air India flight crash. This is, of course, from ATC because the black box is now reported to be heavily damaged and India is planning to send it to the US to recover data. Indian authorities will be sending the damaged black box to the US National Safety Transport Board, that's NTSB, for further investigation. And hopefully this will give us some clue on what really happened.
So I'm hearing that there is a lot of discontent within Air India pilots and even in their WhatsApp groups, etc. They are talking about how finally the blame will be pinned on the pilot and no other questions will be raised. There is a lot of discontent. I don't know if Air India employees will eventually speak out, but your Let Me Explain is also on that, right?
Yeah. Much before we get answers, there were warning signs. What those warning signs were, how they were ignored, that's what I'm focusing on in Let Me Explain. Kerala temple assistant arrested for sexual assault, blackmail of Bengaluru woman. Now, a complaint has been filed by a woman in Belandur police station in Bengaluru. We have been attempting to speak to her, piece together what happened. But I'm told this temple in Thrissur in itself is extremely interesting. There has been stupendous growth of the popularity and also wealth of this temple, which is actually an ancient temple. So our colleagues are looking at how this happened, how influencers are roped in to kind of make this temple more popular. Now, Karnataka proposes longer workday and more overtime. Of course, unions are resisting. They call it slavery. And yesterday evening, in fact, there was a cabinet meeting. This was supposed to feature in that. We'll get to what really happened. But the proposed changes are these. The government seeks to extend the maximum working hours to 10 hours a day and maximum overtime to 12 hours a day. It also seeks to increase the overtime limit from 50 to 144 hours in 3 months.
That's a really big jump, 50 to 144 hours in 3 months. Now, of course, the Karnataka government is saying that, look, these are guidelines which have come from the union government. Other states too have brought in these changes, but they're going to face a lot of resistance here. A few months ago, if you remember, there was a proposal to increase working hours to 14 hours. And there were lots of associations of IT and ITES who were pressurizing the government. This time too, it seems like that. Sivapriyan, I think in Tamil Nadu also there was such a proposal and it was taken back, right? After a lot of opposition?
Yeah. That was in April 2023. So it was basically for specific industries. The Tamil Nadu government wanted to increase the work hours to 12 hours a day or about 48 hours a week to industries like electronics and non-leather footwear industry. So the justification that the Tamil Nadu government gave then was that these industries are fully air conditioned and so most of them are young employees who are working here. So if they want to work for 48 hours a week, which means like about 12 hours a day, and then they want to go have an extended weekend from Friday to Sunday or from Monday to Wednesday, they can easily go on a 3-day holiday. This is the justification that they gave. That was actually, that bill was passed in the assembly, but it was because of intense opposition from left parties, Vidudalai Sirthaigal Katchi and the Congress. The DMK government first put it on hold and then Chief Minister M.K. Stalin on the May day, that is on, I think, May 1, 2023, he completely withdrew that bill from the assembly, and then the government said that like the number of working hours will continue at 8 hours a day. But this proposal, like what I heard from a lot of officials and sources then was like a lot of companies still make people work beyond 8 hours. So like sometimes 10 hours. So they just wanted to formalize such longer working hours, at least in some industries where people work with a lot of comfortable things like air condition and so on. But like it was withdrawn because of intense opposition from within the DMK alliance itself.
So I think the problem is in that catchphrase, right? If people want to never really stays. Once you have a rule in place, it becomes you have to.
Yeah.
And that is where the resistance comes from.
But our last point, those in Karnataka government defend this, saying that it's a proposal from the union government. We're only discussing it. But also what they actually tell us is there is pressure from a lot of companies, particularly MNCs, saying that if you can't facilitate this, then we can go to Taiwan or other parts of China. But the larger question is, do we want to compete with China and Taiwan by becoming sweatshops like they have in China? Moving to Tamil Nadu, Supreme Court questions suspension of Tamil Nadu ADGP in abduction case. I throw it to the two of you to give us more details on this.
So basically, this was an inter-caste love affair in which there was a kidnapping, and the brother of the man was kidnapped, and the accusation was that this ADGP's car was used for the abduction. When the family complained, the High Court came down heavily on the government, on ADGP, and the MLA of the place who was with the AIDMK alliance. And of course, then the whole thing played out in both the High Court and the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think the High Court order was very stringent on the ADGP. The High Court said that he has to be arrested. So the High Court also said that you cannot, a public servant, a police official cannot get the same relaxation or same freedom as a public representative. So they clearly drew the distinction and asked the MLA Puvai Jaganmurthy. Jaganmurthy is quite popular in Tiruvallur and other parts of that region, and he is also a popular Dalit leader in that particular region. So he has a huge fan following, and there have been instances in the past of his supporters ransacking buildings and so on. So summoning Puvai Jaganmurthy to the High Court and giving him a complete dressing down, and then asking the police to secure the ADGP Jairam was something that no one expected.
3 Maoist leaders, including Central Committee members, killed by police in Andhra. If you want to know more about what's happening, go beyond the headlines, then you can watch 3 videos, all of them part of Watcherism by our colleague Sudipto. The first one is an interview of Professor Hargopal, the second one, Digri Prasad Chauhan, and then Sudipto's own reflections on how the movement started and what he thought of what's happening now. Telangana to formulate a policy for cow protection. Dhanya, sometimes I can't differentiate between Congress and BJP.
But Revanth Reddy said, right, that he grew up with the RSS.
He was an APVP.
No, but he said he grew up with the RSS, then something with Naidu.
He went to school in Naidu and then college with Rahul Gandhi or some nonsense.
No, he went
to
school with RSS, college with Naidu, and now working for Rahul Gandhi. This is not the only thing. The Gaddar Awards, they gave it to Razakar.
Yes.
The movie which was openly
Islamophobic.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's saying don't make a movie
Gory.
about Razakars, but it was gory, it was a propaganda movie, and the Congress government has given the award. So yes, I think Revanth Reddy still has remnants of his schooling in the RSS, and so do people around him for sure. Okay, so now we'll go on to our first discussion. This is about Keezhadi. On the 17th of June 2025, archaeologist K. Amarnath Krishna, whose excavation at Keezhadi in Tamil Nadu was transferred out. In fact, this is the umpteenth number of transfer he's getting. He was transferred from New Delhi to Greater Noida. And this transfer is significant because it came just a month after the ASI responded to his report on Keezhadi. Now, Amarnath Ramakrishna was serving as the Director Antiquity and Director of the National Mission on Monuments and Antiquities, which is known as NMMA. So now he's been transferred from Delhi to Greater Noida, and he will only be a part of NMMA, which is a defunct section of the ASI. So this has become a huge controversy in Tamil Nadu, not only the transfer of Amarnath Ramakrishna, but the fact that the union government did not want to accept the report which he submitted about Keezhadi. The report was submitted almost 2.5 years ago, and only 1 month back, the union government said that, or the ASI rather said that certain revisions have to be made to the report, but Amarnath Ramakrishna said no revisions will be made. So Tamil Nadu politicians, including from the DMK, the Chief Minister himself, the Congress, the CPIM, the CPI, have all been saying that this is an attack on Tamil culture, that the BJP and their politicians do not want to see any kind of knowledge or any kind of study on the Sangam era. which shows how ancient the Tamil civilization was. The AIDMK has been substantially quiet on this issue, though the excavation started during their time. They are, of course, in alliance with the BJP. That's also very surprising for me because elections are coming next year, and this is not an issue where you want to irk the population of Tamil Nadu, because people are very, very proud of what was discovered at Keezhadi. I'll go to Shiva first. Shiva, your first thoughts on the fact that the 982-page report which Amarnath Ramakrishna submitted, the union government said that you have to revise. I mean, I keep saying union government, but it's the ASI also.
Under the union government.
Under the union
Accurate,
government, yeah. Said that you have to revise this report.
See, like they kept this report idle for about 2.5 years, and suddenly 2.5 years later they send a letter to Amarnath saying that you will have to rework on this report, and telling him that actually he has derived a period of, he has said that Keezhadi could belong between 8th century BCE to 3rd century CE. This is a period that Amarnath Ramakrishna has derived for Keezhadi, and he has classified the period into 3 phases: early Keezhadi period, middle Keezhadi period, and matured Keezhadi period. This is the classification that Amarnath has made in his 982-page report. This is a very meticulous report that Amarnath wrote with the assistance of his team. So he worked for about 1.5 years on that report, and it is not just Amarnath's views. Amarnath wrote about what he saw on the field, and with a lot of scientific evidence. So what happened was, like, there was AMS dating of 23 artifacts from collected from Keezhadi were sent to Beta Analytical Laboratory in Florida in the US, and they all came with the date of 300 CE, which is 3rd century CE. So like he said, like it could belong from 3rd century to 8th century. So that is where the contention is now. The ASI says you could place it at 3rd century, but from 5th century to 8th century, if you're going to place the period, you need to have more substantial evidence. But the ASI seems to overlook another date which has been derived by the Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology, which is 585 BCE, which has been accepted. That is also an AMS dating from the same Florida laboratory. So that is 585 BCE, which actually pushed the Sangam era from 2000 years ago to about 2300 years ago. So this is where the contention is. What Amarnath has conveyed to the ASI and to other people is that, like, this is my report. This is what I saw on the field, and whatever suggestions they'll have to make, the ASI or the experts make, it has to be only with either with the way I've written it or with the grammatical errors, or they should just vet the report grammatically. They are not supposed to vet the report on what I saw. So he basically says, like, whatever I have written, I have justified them, I have substantiated them with scientific evidence, and it's not that alone. That report speaks a lot about Keezhadi and its culture. It's not just throws scientific evidence, but it also says that the habitation deposit of the mounds suggests that the Keezhadi is a unique cultural site with different phases of cultural unit. That is why he has derived it into 3 phases of cultural unit, and whatever they have found out. So like when Amarnath excavated that site for about 2 years, from 2014 to 16, he found 5,800 artifacts. And the reason why Tamil Nadu politicians are up in arms against the union government or the ASI is the fact that after Amarnath found 5,800 artifacts, in the 3rd phase, Amarnath was actually very vocal about the findings. He went on and on to talk about the findings and even calling Keezhadi a Sangam era site. So he was suddenly transferred out to Assam in 2017. And then P.S. Sriraman, another archaeologist, was brought in, and he threw up the towel saying that there was no significant findings in the 3rd phase. That is when the Madurai High Court bench of the Madras High Court intervened and asked the Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology to take over. So from 2017 to 2025, 7 phases have been conducted by the Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology, during which they have excavated, they have unearthed about 14,000 artifacts. So like after you said that there is nothing, there is no significant findings in the 3rd phase, the State Department of Archaeology has found 14,000 artifacts and they have scientifically documented them. They have sent most of the samples to US Beta Analytical Laboratory. They have sent them to the Birbal Sahni Institute in Lucknow. They have sent them to the PRI in Ahmedabad and to a host of universities across the globe. So all these are scientific analysis. They are not the imagination of Amarnath Ramakrishna or the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister or the Tamil Nadu Archaeology Minister. These are scientific analysis and these dates have been given by the labs. So after keeping the report idle for about 2.5 years and now asking Amarnath to actually rework on the period. So that's something like even people like me who have covered Keezhadi for about 7 years, 8 years, we are not able to really see the real intention of what actually the union government wants. So like they ask for scientific evidence and actually if you speak, like the Archaeological Survey of India doesn't publish excavation reports. That's the biggest complaint against the Archaeological Survey of India. Here is an archaeologist who has taken time, who actually sought a transfer to Chennai. He came to Chennai in September 2021 from Goa, started working on the report from December 2021 and submitted the report in January 2023. And now 2.5 years later, you say that there are problems with the report. Yes, there could be problems, but there is a way of telling that to the archaeologist or putting the report in the public domain and asking people to comment on it. That's something that the union government can do. But rather than completely rejecting the report or asking Amarnath to rework on it, but Amarnath has flatly refused to rework, and I think that's the reason why he has been transferred now.
I think the point of what the rework is very significant here, right? Because, and it's a terrible state of affairs that one state has to stand up for its own cultural reclamation, seek answers outside, send it to labs outside the country, and a union government is systematically trying to scuttle any kind of excavation. First, there was, the man who replaced Mr. Amarnath Ramakrishna said that there isn't proof of continuous, ruins, which means that it wasn't a thriving civilization. Now, if you do not continue with the excavation, there's no way to determine this. That isn't a valid enough reason. As the Madras High Court finally did find, it took the court to step in and say that you continue with the excavation.
In fact, judges went to the site
exactly
to understand what is happening. That's when they said that if the ASI is not interested, let Tamil Nadu government and the ASI do it together.
Absolutely. And the second thing, and this is something the ADMK themselves had admitted at the time, that the funds being given for the excavation is far lesser than what was spent in Gujarat, Rajasthan, other parts of northern and western India for similar excavation. Now, the point is this is a war of narratives, and that's the thing that they're trying to hide. This was from what we found so far, and like Siva rightly said, this had pottery, this had glass beads, it had weaving. So it was clearly an urban civilization. It was also literate because they found Tamil Brahmi scriptures. And it also had trade. It was a highly organized society by the looks of it. But here's what is missing. It does not show, it has signs of sun, moon, all of that, but there aren't any spiritual, religious, or any kind of rituals.
I thought it had signs of sun and moon.
Sun and moon, it's there.
Yes.
But beyond that, there aren't any religious or ritual that has been seen, which means that this could be a literate society which was not religious in nature. That goes against the narrative that the union government is possibly pushing. That could be one reluctance. Second thing for, I think, Tamils and also a lot of South Indians, this isn't just about one site. It's a cultural reclamation, right? Because this is one site that comes very close to Indus Valley. We talk about when it was, the date and all of it. But it's as close as it can get to the Indus Valley civilization. We've seen a lot of links and similarities between that and this. So it is also about rewriting Indian history with South being given its due position, something that has not happened for hundreds of years. So it's not a matter of just that one side. For all of South, it is extremely important. And that's the narrative I feel that's being scuttled.
So, Shiva was talking about the three different periods which the report talks about. For those listening, basically, Amarnath divided into three periods. One is the pre-early historic period between 800 BC to 500 BC. The mature early history is between 500 BC to the end of 1st century BC, and the post-early history from 1st century BC to 300 C. Now, the problem is with the pre-early historic period, right? Now, when they are saying that let's have more evidence, what exactly is the government asking for, Shiva?
So like they want him to give scientific analysis. Like for 300 BCE, he has AMS datings of 23 artifacts. Yes, Amarnath, during the first two phases of excavation, he did not stumble upon an artifact which has been dated to 6th century BC, which is true. But yes, Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology has a date of 585 BCE, which has been accepted, which has been widely published, and only after that, see, actually, like you people were talking about the AIADMK government's reluctance now. Even then, the report, the Keezhadi report of the TNSTA in 2019 September was released despite the AIADMK government's reluctance. It was an event. The Tamil Nadu's current finance secretary, Mr. T. Udayachandran, himself said it at the Indus Valley Centenary Conference on January 5, 2025, earlier this year. Like, they released the report in the middle of an event. So like it was a surprise element in the event, and only after the report was released, people started noticing about Keezhadi, and that became a huge debate. So like actually Pooja rightly pointed out about the spiritualness of Keezhadi and like whether there was any signs and all. So like every time Amarnath participates in a discussion in Tamil Nadu or elsewhere, whenever there is a question about Keezhadi, even in January this year, a person stood up from his chair and asked him about was there any spiritual things that they found out. So Amarnath Amarnath just said that like if you keep asking me about what I didn't find, I won't be able to answer. So like Amarnath has been quite candid about a lot of things on what they found from Keezhadi as well. And like the Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology has been publishing reports. So even in January this year, they published a report called Antiquity of Iron. So that is about the Iron Age site in Tamil Nadu, which is in Sivapriyan in Thoothukudi district. It is about 5,200 years old. So that date came in 2021. It didn't come in 2024 and they published it in 2025. That date came in 2021. It's again a AMS date from the Florida lab, but they sent the same samples to 2 institutes in India. They did a lot of checks, balances. They sent the report to a lot of experts, at least 10 experts across India from different states. They got their views and then they published that report. So like everything that the Tamil Nadu government is doing, yes, the Tamil Nadu government is also politicizing it. I am not denying it at all. And they have a political compulsion to do it. But every report that is being put out in the public is scientifically validated and is scientifically proven. The Tamil Nadu government is not speaking from its imaginative mind. They are putting it across. And the Antiquity of Iron report, like they flew in 2 experts, Rakesh Tiwari, the former Archaeological Survey of India Director General, and Professor Dilip Chakrabarti from the Oxford University. They flew in from their respective countries, like Rakesh Tiwari from Lucknow and Dilip Chakrabarti from London. They flew into Chennai to validate the findings and say that this is fantastic, because like Dilip Chakrabarti has been telling people for the past 50 years that iron technology in India could only be homegrown and it could have never been imported from anywhere. So like these are the findings that are being scientifically proven and scientifically validated. So like likewise. So like when they talk about they need more evidence on Keezhadi. So obviously the question is about what are the scientific evidences or scientific validation for things that people or politicians in North India claim. They say that plastic surgery was first invented in India and so on. So like there is no scientific evidence or scientific validation for all those things. Here is a report which is a meticulous report, and the report talks about the trade between Keezhadi and Middle East. So like there was an identification of a domestic horse, which is quite rare in India. So this horse could have been imported from one of the Arab countries. That is the report talks about. And the report also has pollen analysis of samples from Keezhadi, which found excess production of rice, which contributed to the trade. And Amarnath quotes Dr. K. Anupama of the French Institute Pondicherry and Aarti Deshpande of Deccan College in his analysis. So it's not just his views or his findings, but he has also substantiated his findings with reports from experts. These experts are not just from Tamil Nadu, these experts are from across the country.
So this also does a lot for the Sangam period and the literature of Sangam era, right? Because there is a small section that has been questioning the age that people are talking about. In that sense, it adds a certain level of validation to Sangam era literature as well, and it pushes it back, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, we have been talking about Sangam era for about centuries together, but there was no archaeological evidence. So this was being talked as if it is only in literature, you don't have any archaeological evidence. So the first time, because way back in 1939, K.N. Dikshit of the Archaeological Survey of India said that if you conduct a proper archaeological excavation on the banks of Tamarabarani, somewhere in Tirunelveli or in Thoothukudi, you will find a site that is either contemporaneous with Indus Valley or a little older or a little earlier than the Indus period. This is what he said in 1939. But South has been ignored by the Archaeological Survey of India for decades together. So when they found a Sangam era site, an urban settlement. Okay, people have a problem in calling Keezhadi a urban civilization. Okay, let's call it an urban settlement. So when they found an urban settlement for the first time in South India, so there is a lot of opposition to it because it has always been thought that South India never had an urban civilization. So that is where the problem begins. So this is not just an urban settlement, it was an industrialized urban settlement. The Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology has found evidences of ceramic industry being functioning there, of a beads industry being found there, and a lot of evidence. I do agree that the Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology should be more transparent in its findings. They should release reports periodically and so on. But whatever they have done so far, it has been scientifically validated and scientifically proven. So with Keezhadi, Amarnath Ramakrishna from the ASI has given a clear analysis. He has said that this site should be excavated. See, it's a mound of about 110 acres. What has been done in the past 10 years is just about 10 acres. It's just about 10% of what has been found. So we really have a long way to go. Only when we dig, we will find something. So if we don't dig, we are not going to find anything at all.
Shiva, I want to just ask about the whole finding. Politically speaking, what is it which threatens the BJP? For example, is it because it's the possibility of the non-Vedic civilization back then? Because we have to place this in the realm of politics, right? That's the reason why they're opposing it. And I also find the dichotomy very strange because the BJP at one side wants to win over Tamilians. Yeah. There's a state that they're working very hard to impress people because like everybody says, the last bastions may perhaps be Tamil Nadu and neighboring state of Kerala. So at one end, you want to impress Tamilians, win them over. But on the other side, you cannot let go of the larger picture, right? So how do you place this within the realm of politics itself?
See, like one is about they don't want any of their present narratives to be challenged. Keezhadi will certainly challenge their present perspective that they are parroting it. So like Keezhadi is going to do that because like earlier there have been, see, like Indus Valley civilization is the most one of the sophisticated urban civilizations to have been unearthed in India in the past century. But there is not even one celebration by the Union government or the ASI in the past 1 year on the centenary of Indus Valley civilization. So because like the Tamil Nadu government has been talking about Indus Valley civilization, it's the Tamil Nadu government which organized a centenary seminar and a centenary celebration for Indus Valley civilization. And also like they have now unveiled statue for John Marshall who discovered this site. So like the BJP is really in a fix. Like Dhanya rightly pointed out, on the one hand, BJP wants to win over Tamils, but on the other hand, they keep doing all these things. The BJP clearly doesn't have a strategy to win over Tamils. They are really confused on what to do. So that's the clear thing that I can see. But politically speaking, Keezhadi has given some kind of a political tool for the DMK and other political parties that talk about the Tamil cultural identity and the Tamil linguistic identity. But for the BJP, since 2017, this has been a problem for the BJP because on one hand, they talk about Tamil, but on the other hand, like they go and impose Hindi or like try to bring Hindi as a third language or some kind of indirect imposition. So the BJP really doesn't have a strategy vis-a-vis Tamil Nadu because like what they speak on an even day doesn't match what they speak on an odd day.
Yeah.
And the further dichotomy, Dhanya, is this is a government that loves talking about ancient history. Kauravas were the first test tube babies of India. It started from here, like Siva mentioned, but still they want to deny this.
No, and also like he was saying, Tamil Nadu has celebrated the Indus Valley, any discovery, the DMK government also. So I think, this is the only time perhaps where the BJP doesn't feel India as a whole, like every history is to be celebrated because history is also narrative, right? And narrative gets broken if you suddenly project one history over the other. My final thing is to just quickly touch upon elections because it is going to come next year very soon. Before everything, me and Pooja will again be covering elections. Yeah, something I've come to sort of dread now.
You know, I dread till I get on the road, but once you're there, it's like muscle memory, right? You start enjoying it.
Yeah. No, so I'm a little surprised at the AIDMK's reticence. How can they not react strongly to this? And the DMK seems to be on the roads. Last 2 days, there have been protests by the students' wing and everyone else. So politically, how will this play out? I mean, not like these kind of issues will by itself decide the vote, whether a person votes for or against. But this is at the back of your mind, right? When you choose who to vote for, this is at the back of your mind. It becomes one of the issues tied to the others. How do you think this will play out politically, Shiva?
I feel like this adds to the DMK's narrative of the 2026 being Tamil Nadu versus Delhi elections. So like it's about Tamil Nadu's self-respect or self-pride versus the Delhi hegemony. This is how they are projecting this, and this adds to their narrative. So like the DMK going to the streets and talking about Keezhadi and so on. See, like the ADMK is not able to defend itself. So like there has been only one statement from R.B. Uday Kumar which said that if there is any problem for Keezhadi or for Tamil culture, ADMK will be the first party to give voice. But there is already a problem here. So like Amarnath is being unduly targeted and his report is not being published and the ADMK has to speak out. So this is where the DMK wants to score and projecting the ADMK as kind of subservient to the BJP, like they have been projecting the ADMK as kind of another unit of the BJP for the past 5 or 6 years. So the DMK wants to play to the gallery and say like, see, these are the things that we have been doing it. So they don't want any of the Tamil cultural identity to come out. So they don't want Tamil Nadu to progress. They want us to learn Hindi. They want us to do this. They don't want us to do this. But the ADMK, instead of fighting or standing with us, the ADMK is with the BJP, which is working against the interests of the Tamil people. So this is what the DMK wants to project the elections about, Dhanya.
But quickly, Dhanya, to your point of whether this can sway votes, I think it could very well, because look at the narrative, right? It's about identity, it's about reclaiming a forgotten glory, period of grandeur, perhaps.
No, I'm saying there's a lot of issues bunched together, right? Like Hindi.
Exactly.
this,
Hindi, funds, denying of funds to Tamil Nadu, a whole bunch of things.
Language,
will craft.
delimitation.
Exactly.
Yeah, lots of things. In fact, census, delimitation,
Absolutely.
all that.
So
Yeah.
it'll weave into that narrative.
So to those watching, I was telling Pooja that she should go to Keezhadi during the weekend on Monday, and let's do a Let Me Explain on the ground. What is your thought? What is your thought about that? Do write to us at southcentral@thenewsminute.com. Do you want Pooja to leave the studios, to leave the comfort of the studios, go out in the sun and report from Keezhadi? Do tell us. Thank you very much, Shiva, for joining us on this episode.
Thank you, Dhanya, for having me on this show.
Okay, now for the second discussion of the day. We are going to be talking about the murder of Raja Raghuvanshi. It was allegedly planned by his wife, Sonam Raghuvanshi, and she asked her boyfriend, lover, Raj Kushwaha, and others to murder Raja while they were on their honeymoon in Meghalaya. Now, news channels, even newspapers to a large extent, have been full of this murder. They have tracked every angle possible. Of course, when a woman murders her husband, that too on the honeymoon, it does make for a shocking story, and nobody's condoning that crime. If she did commit that crime, then she will be punished. But I think this story is not just about how did a woman murder her husband? Why did a woman murder her husband? We have to look beyond that on the circumstances which makes a woman actually murder her newlywed husband than to stand up for herself. There's a piece which Priya Ramani has written in The Quint saying that parents are also to be blamed for the situation that we are in. That it's not just Sonam Raghuvanshi who should be blamed for the crime that she allegedly did, but it's also her parents. It's also society which does not allow her to choose her partner. And remember, this is the first time, perhaps in the recent past, that we have seen a woman plotting this kind of a murder. But this happens all the time, right? We call them honor killings. I personally have a huge problem calling them honor killings because those murders have nothing to do with honor. But those killings, whether it's caste killings or dishonor killings, those are mostly done by the families, where a man and a woman, perhaps coming from two different castes or two different religions, marry each other. One family does not approve, and we do see quotations being given, murders being committed by the family members themselves. Perhaps this one made a lot more headlines because it was not the family, but the woman who plotted the murder.
But just to put this in a little more context, it has been reported now that Sonam did tell her parents that she was in love with someone else. That person, Raj, like you said, happened to be an employee of her father's. Now, the Sonam's family belongs to a Rajput community, and the guy in question, Raj, was from an OBC community. Plus, he was an employee, like I said. So there is a class and a caste, equation to this. The fact that a woman was not allowed to choose her own partner, was forced into marriage to another man who possibly didn't even know all of this before he agreed to marry her, talks a lot about the context, the situation in which the crime has taken place. And if we don't address that, we are erasing and these kind of crimes. Because Dhanya, this year alone, in 2025, there are at least 6 high-profile such cases of women killing their husbands. Most of them are in the first few days of getting married.
Yeah, and you can replace Sonam Raghuvanshi or Raja Raghuvanshi with anybody else, right? It could have been the man who's forced or the woman who's forced into the relationship.
The man too was forced because he didn't have the information that he should have had.
Exactly.
In that sense.
So joining us to discuss about this is our guest, the second guest of the day, Rohin Bhatt. Rohin is a non-binary queer lawyer. He's also an author and he practices at the Supreme Court of India. He's a graduate of the Gujarat National Law University and the Harvard Medical School. He has worked on some landmark cases. Rohin's debut book, The Urban Elite versus Union of India, explores the gaps in India's marriage equality movement. It has a powerful mix of personal narrative and legal insights. Thank you, Rohin, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And late to the show, for which she will be fined and she will not be giving any recommendations.
She will be sending us treats through Swiggy.
Yes, is Leena Reghunath, the co-host. who has appeared only for the second segment of the show. Leena, why are you late?
Sorry, guilty as charged. Had to go get an appointment done. So sorry, Dhanya.
Okay, it's your miss. You discussed. You missed the discussion on Keezhadi and Sangam era. So, like I said, Sonam Raghuvanshi and Raja Raghuvanshi's entire episode has been covered from top to bottom. I'm sure all of you are much more aware of details than we are. We, of course, did not cover it too much because it did not come from southern India, but our news partner, News Laundry, has been putting out stories. I think Manisha also did a news-ins on the kind of frivolous coverage that this story got. So let's not forget that we are talking about individuals here who are forced into a system and they act in different ways, right? For example, a Sonam Raghuvanshi perhaps chose a criminal way out of a situation that she was caught in. Rohin, what are your first thoughts about the whole thing? And did you read these articles? I think Quint had two very interesting articles. One was by Priya Ramani and one more which spoke about why patriarchy also plays a role in all this.
Yes, I thank you for having me. I've read both of these articles and I think they make very interesting points. This also sort of adds to what I have strongly believed in, is that when people enter into marriages, they often don't have enough agency to refuse because of society, because of family, or for any other reasons. I've appeared, for example, for gay men who were forced to marry women despite telling their parents that they were gay. So when people are entering into marriages, they often don't have that sort of agency to refuse marriage. And when that happens, you have cases like this. Well, of course, as Priya points out very interestingly in her article, an added layer of criminalization of love. You've seen like Hydra heads, these supposedly anti-love jihad laws, quote unquote, pop up in various states across the country. What you are doing is that you want to preserve your caste and class endogamy and now even religious endogamy, all of which are fueled by a politics of hate. And when that happens and when, agency is refused, more so for women, you are going to sort of see these acts of criminality, these acts which of course cannot be condoned, but of course and cannot be defended in any way. But it's not impossible to see what motivated the act.
Yeah. No, so because Rohin mentioned the word agency, Sonam, for example, had the agency to decide that she has to plot this murder and for whatever careful ways that they plotted it. And initially, I don't think anyone suspected her, right? The suspicion emerged only much later. But that's also very surprising, right? That a woman who had the agency to perhaps plot a murder did not have the agency to say no to her parents. That's how complicated things are.
But she plotted the murder without her family, the society that she lives in, knowing that she was doing it. And let's not forget that patriarchy here is the root cause, and it didn't just impact the woman. There were two men who were also impacted. One is the husband who was murdered. Second is a boyfriend who was not allowed to marry the woman he wanted to, and now is one of the accused in the crime. So, it is a buzzword, men's rights and violence against men. It is a buzzword, and there is irresponsible coverage being done on it. We're not saying men are not victims here. Men are victims. But can you imagine that this woman initially could not choose to not marry the man she didn't want? Second, she thought that she did not have the agency to walk away from a marriage that she did not want. This could stem from a whole host of issues. First, of course, is social stigma. But even though she was financially independent, and I was reading, this is very interesting. This is apparently a survey that says that women are emerging to be more financially independent, and technology has also increased this kind of conflict, because of which there are more crimes against men. So what we're saying is that women are now more financially independent. They're standing up for themselves, questioning the status quo, and that is what is leading to conflict. We're not looking at the root cause that women are being forced into choices that are not theirs.
No, but I think I should disagree here. Like a Sonam Raghuvanshi need not have made a choice of murdering him, right?
Of course
she could have just said, can we please divorce? I mean, that's a very problematic choice that she makes.
But, let's put this out there. Committing a crime of this nature could not have been easy. We do not condone the route that she took. You cannot kill somebody because you didn't want to be married to him. Violence is not a solution. But she thought that's easier than walking away from that marriage. What does that tell you about a society? That's really scary for us.
Leena, you want to add something?
Yeah, Dhanya, I'll have to also apologize. There is some construction activity going on in my building, so there might be some noise in the background.
Other than being late, you're also bringing noise.
Late to the podcast too. Yeah, yes. So you know what makes any crime story very interesting and very newsworthy is when there is a lot of dichotomies in there, right? So here is a woman who's brave enough to plan and plot and execute and a murder in such a way, a murder of a man that she has recently married, with whom, from whatever we know so far of the case, there is no reason that she would have so much of a hatred as to murder him so brutally, right? To murder someone so brutally, you should have like a genuine cause of hatred. So from whatever the narrative that has come out, when the first blow was hit and when he started screaming, she ran away from the scene of crime. So she was not someone who was as cold-blooded to stand and witness the crime that she has orchestrated herself. And this woman who could go to this extent to plan a murder, and I think it was not just his murder that she was planning, she was also trying to erase any trace of her being alive, right? So she wants to evaporate from society with the identity that she currently held and live a life somewhere else with a separate identity. Maybe that's what she was aiming for when she planned this. And such a woman who could go to so much length to do this kind of a crime doesn't, as you both have pointed out here, didn't have the way to challenge her own parents against coercing her into marriage that she didn't want, and to explain it to her husband and his family and to seek divorce or seek an alternate path that would have given her an easier life, you know. And when society puts women and marriages these very difficult context, is that it's not an easy conversation for them to have. I think that is when this kind of a twisted way out of it occurs, and I don't know if we can completely blame patriarchy for this, or whether this is a result of much of the crime scenes happening and evolving around us, and new technology enabling us that would have given her and her accomplices the courage to go forward with such a devious plan. But whatever, this is such a shocking incident that has played out, and I think live TV has also milked it to the maximum for TRPs, given that a woman has, every time a woman has committed a murder, it's not that I think men have an extra gene to kill and do crimes. I think across the genders, that tendency to do crime or is equally distributed. But when a woman does it, it's always like an extra layer of shock and storytelling and narratives and motives that are added to it, and that is all being played out on live TV right now.
I think it's very easy to sort of say, that she could have gotten a divorce, but getting a divorce is not an easy process. I think it takes at least a couple of years of litigation. It takes access to, lawyers, and litigation itself is an expensive process. And that is also followed by the opprobrium that you get being a divorcee woman, So I think it's easy to say that she could have gotten a divorce, but it's not sort of that black and white to say, I want a divorce and you're divorced in the next few weeks or months. And it does not end at divorce. After divorce, I think there's pressure always to sort of either enter into a second marriage or, worse, you're left with at your own devices. So I don't think even divorce is a realistic answer to this. The answer perhaps lies only in ensuring that when two people enter into a marriage, they do so out of their own free will.
Yeah. But how is that even possible, Rohin? I mean, it sounds good to say we have to ensure, but if you look at statistics, I mean, we have only really old statistics available. 2011 surveys show that only 5.8 to 6% of marriages in India are intercaste. I don't believe that the number would have gone up drastically. That's the limit of intercaste marriages. It will be even lesser for interreligious marriages, right? So to convince parents that it's okay, for example, I remember this incident from Kerala. It happened a few years ago. Kevin, he was, I think, 22 or 23 years old. He was married to this woman called Neenu. Neenu was 21-year-old then. And Kevin was murdered by Neenu's brother and relatives, and they all have been convicted by a court. Now, why the story stood out for me is that Kevin was a Dalit Christian and Neenu was a Latin Catholic. So there was a caste issue here, and the parents did not want the marriage, which is why they executed this murder. What is surprising is that Neenu's mother was a Muslim and the father was a Christian. So they had an interreligious wedding. Now, you would expect an interreligious couple to perhaps then say yes to the next generation to have an intercaste wedding, right? Which they did not allow. And I have interviewed Neenu myself then when she told me that her mother used to burn her hands every time when she spoke about his boyfriend. And a young life, right? We have seen so many cases where we have even seen violence between two communities within the scheduled caste, two communities within the OBCs. The violence, of course, more when it's somebody from an oppressor caste marrying the oppressed caste. And almost in every case, we see that it's the man who's targeted, which is because the belief is that if the woman gets pregnant, then in the womb of woman, you would have the child of a man who's from a lowered caste, right? So technically, in most of these murders, it's always the man who's from the lowered caste and the woman who's from the upper caste or the oppressor caste. So there are so many dynamics playing out. I don't think that things are becoming any better. Like, so many of these cases are getting reported from states which even talk about emancipation, like, for example, Tamil Nadu, which talks so much about how they are advanced, progressive, but you see so many caste killings from that state, right? In fact, if you look at statistics, NCRB says there are only around 25 murders in 2019 and 20 and 33 in 2021. This is what the NCRB records as honor killings. But if you go through the data, or even reported killings, the number is way higher. If you ask cops as to why is the number only 1 or 2 from a state, they will say that, oh, we are booking this under the SC/ST law. It never comes under honor killing, though the NCRB has a provision. So we don't even know the real numbers. How are we going to find solutions when we are not ready to acknowledge the problem itself?
Well, I think the answer lies in two parts. First is that I think the situation is getting worse rather than getting better. It is getting worse because now you have states like Maharashtra, for example, who wanted to set up a panel to sort of trace every intercaste and interfaith marriage and then look at quote unquote a larger conspiracy. You have states like Uttar Pradesh, which now, if you marry outside your religion or outside your caste, will automatically notify your parents or wants written consent from your parents if you enter into such a marriage. So the situation is getting worse. Now, if you look at the wide chasm between reporting of data versus honor killing, the answer perhaps might lie into how these cases go to court. A lot of these cases, for example, are not prosecuted. A lot of these cases have external pressures on the police to not report it as an honor killing, but simply as murder. So hence there might be a large chasm. The answer, I think one of the things that Dr. Ambedkar very famously said is that the only way to end caste system is by intermarriage and interdining. That is to marry outside your caste and have food with people outside your caste. And we are living today in times where both of these things are sort of becoming impossible to do. And you're seeing law used as a weapon of social control to the point where law is being misused and against every, sort of principle of constitutional democracy that the law is being weaponized against people who defy these social norms.
In my opinion, Dhanya, there's another reason why the situation is not getting better. And there we need to introspect the way media covers these issues. I mean, a murder of this nature is sensational any which way. But when the woman is the accused, it makes it for even more, for a lack of better word, masala story, right? And you're unraveling details of the murder to fulfill certain level of voyeurism, curiosity, whatever is the case. But you refuse to step back and look at what led to this. Punish Sonam if she is found guilty. Let's remember right now, she's only been booked. The charge sheet has not been filed. Punish her, punish all the women who commit such crimes. But please, for heaven's sakes, even to protect men, not just to protect the women, look at what is leading to these murders. It isn't just when they're married off without their consent. Many of these cases, if you look at, this year alone, is also because women endure violence, cruelty from their husbands for long periods, and they feel they cannot walk away, so they end up murdering. These are calculated murders. This is not always, a murder of passion. Again, it takes me back to the point of please address this. We need conflict mediation. We need men to also accept that a woman can have issues with how he is behaving and she's allowed to walk away. And the parents need to stand by the woman if she's not happy in a marriage, not say that you will not have a place, you will not have family support or social network if you're in a bad place. You cannot isolate a woman because then it's a cry for help when a woman takes up. Last point I want to make, irrespective of how, disproportionate space is given to these crimes, the fact remains that women still are being murdered more in such cases. That does not change. The power imbalance is not erased because of this.
So my problem with the coverage is not really about man or woman. For example, let's say this was reverse and a man had gone on honeymoon with the wife and got the wife murdered. I think the coverage would have been perhaps little less.
But the language would be different.
No, I think they would have still covered it. My problem is not touching the caste equation here at all, right? And that is something which we have seen through coverages.
Yeah.
For example, Shankar and Kausalya, when Shankar was murdered in Coimbatore in broad daylight, was perhaps one of the few cases which the mainstream TV media, I'm not talking about newspapers, took it up because there was a visual. The same in Telangana. So there are few, Amrita's case. So there are few cases which are being taken up, but the rest are not. My discomfort more than, okay, fine, you find a sensational case because a woman is murdered. My problem is with the non-addressing of the larger issue, of the elephant in the room, which is the parents in this whole situation, right? About how they want endogamy to be pursued and why they would not allow this woman to marry outside her caste, which then leads to this entire problem, right? We need to have more conversations about that. And the moment you step away from that, you are just reducing this to a sensational crime.
Exactly.
Leena?
Yeah, I think from whatever I have read of the news report, maybe you can correct me here. It's sort of her family has come out with a version that putting the blame completely on her for orchestrating the crime and sort of washing their hands off on what led to her being put into a marriage that was not in her favor or was not according to her wish. At this point, Dhanya, let me also point out that, the parents' role, even in a very liberal, so-called liberal, the Kerala society that we see, where we know few years back that how a left politician sort of was against the out of marriage birth of the kid of his daughter and wanted to give up the daughter for adoption, and how that woman had to go to court and fight, and initially all the media was against her, saying that this was an out of marriage kid that she had, and he was in another marriage. So parents sort of dictating how their child's body and sexual life has to be is I think a norm in India, and woman. Also, a woman murdering, using murder to get out of marriage is not new. It's not a new age phenomena. Western societies where women were not allowed back when women were not even allowed to own properties, do education, have a bank account. We have all read stories of how grandparents and grandmothers would tell how they would feed opioids in tea to their partners to slowly murder them. So these stories have come through generations, of how women who were in difficult marriages tried to figure their way out of marriage. At this point, I also want to point out a recent. I think it is in May that the Supreme Court, Justice B.V. Nagratna and S.C. Sharma's bench had looked at a particular case, which is under the Uttarakhand Freedom of Religion Act 2018, where the parents had consented to this interreligious marriage, but then people had a problem, filed an FIR, 2 days into the marriage, the husband was arrested and put in jail. And now the court has let him out and said that, when the whole family has consented, the state as such shouldn't have a problem to such a marriage. And the bench has also said that it is high time to hear long pending challenges to anti-conversion laws. All in all said, I agree to Dhanya's point that when cases like this come out, there is a general tendency to brush under the carpet class and caste equations that come into these things, because often men are from lower caste, men are from lower class backgrounds, and these things work against the union, and that is the reason why these marriages are not allowed by the parents of by the girl's parents in the first place.
So this case which Leena spoke about, Rohin, I'll come to you after this because I think we should also look at queer couples and how it works in that community. I'm sure it's tougher, right? But I just want to quickly talk about the case which Leena mentioned. That's Anupama, the woman from Kerala. She had a daughter. She had a child, a son, in fact. Anupama was having an affair with a married man. His name was Ajit. Her
Can
father.
we say relationship affair has so much stigma in my mind?
In
I
your
know
mind.
it's accurate, but the way it is used, there's so much stigma.
Not in
attached to
mine,
it.
but okay, Anupama was in a relationship with a married man, Ajit. And at the time, her father, Jayachandran, who was a CPI member, he just takes this newborn baby and gives it to an orphanage. And they put the baby up for adoption. The baby has reached a couple in Andhra Pradesh. That's when Anupama realizes everything, and then she approaches the media. So I remember a Malayalam editor calling me at that time saying that because we are doing the story at that Malayalam channel, everybody thinks that just because they are anti-CPIM, can you also take it up? That's when we got into the story and we talked about the different angles, right? It's the woman's agency, whether she's married, unmarried, how old she is. She decided to have a child with her with her partner. Yeah. And then suddenly there was this bite of the wife. This Ajit's wife came and spoke to the media about how difficult their relationship was and he cheated on her. Everybody just turned on to that. They completely forgot that Anupama has had a baby, and no matter Ajit's character, whether it's good, bad, ugly, the fact that she wants her baby back and her father cannot make the decision for her. Thankfully, the court stepped in and they helped, and the baby was brought back from Andhra Pradesh. Now Anupama and Ajit are married. They've had a second child. But this case once again highlighted how the media behaves, right? They spoke about everybody else's agency, but not Anupama's, who's a young mother. Oh my God, she does not have a job. Oh my God, she's not completed her education, or that she's in a relationship with a married man. This is what the focus was on. I mean, I can go on and on about cases where everybody has just missed the elephant in the room, which is why the talk about that murder or talk about any such crime is really something else, right? Rohin, I want to understand from you, we have been talking about caste and class here. How much more difficult is it for people who are queer when they talk about their marriage preferences?
Well, the queer community, of course, does not exist in a vacuum. And so, you've seen caste and class differences also manifest into the queer community as a result. But an added layer to this, is queer people being forced into lavender marriages, gay men forced into marriages with women, lesbian women forced into marriages with men. And that is and I've appeared for 2 or 3 of those gay men. And my understanding of this is, that we've started to see as a society, and historically done so, see the marriage as the end goal of every person's life. Parents see marriage as the last thing that they need to do before, the child is officially off their hands. And that has led to a lot of pressure on getting married. But coming back to your question about how class and caste come into marriage, I think one of the biggest criticism of the marriage equality movement was that, that this will also replicate the caste and class biases. So that is not an issue, I think, which is so easy to poo-poo and say, no, it won't, because it obviously does, it obviously will. To this day, I think if you go on some of these dating apps, you'll see men saying, oh, Brahmin boys only. I only want to sleep with Brahmin men, for example. So it obviously does manifest itself in the queer community as well. So I don't know what the answer is in terms of how do you get rid of this. I think, scholars have struggled with this for decades. You have people like Dr. Ambedkar struggling with it. From then you have, Uma Chakrabarti studying it in the early 90s. You have modern scholars like Suraj Yengre, etc., Yashika Dutt studying it. So I think caste is a sort of this very nefarious creature that manifests itself in surprising ways, but is also tentacular in how it has sort of managed to grip every aspect of our life, from the food we eat to the clothes we wear to the people we love. And the only answer to this, perhaps, to my mind, is to encourage more intercaste and interfaith marriages. Several governments earlier used to have schemes to promote intercaste marriage. You'd get a nominal sum when you marry people outside your caste. But those schemes also, if I'm not wrong, have started either being cut down or being stopped.
I don't think there's any state government also which wants to take a risk by promoting intercaste marriages. Before I go to final thoughts on Pooja and Leena, there is this case that we had covered a few years ago, which actually made me think as to, normally we say that the solution lies in young people. People are getting more educated, therefore they will differ in the way they think, right? While covering this case, I almost felt like it's the end of the tunnel, and perhaps young people are not becoming any different, but they are becoming more rigid and more conservative. I'll come to that. Before that, there is an article in the print I was reading which said that looking at the surveys, looking at the numbers of intercaste marriages, apparently if the mother is more educated, then there is a higher possibility of an intercaste or interreligious marriage being okay. Now back to young people. So this was a case where a dentist, a young woman, had died by suicide because her husband had been beating her up. He had been asking for dowry, and they were both Muslims. It was a marriage of love, and she died by suicide. So I called the father and I asked him, why did your daughter, end her life by dying by suicide? Did you not call her back? Because there were a couple of times when this man had beaten her up. There were ample opportunities for you to have called her back. So the father very surprisingly told me that, look, I told her, please divorce this man. You need not stay back in this marriage. I don't want her to stay back. So I asked him, then why did she stay back? He said, I don't know. She has read all these books where she thinks that if you lose your virginity to a man, then you have to stay back with that man no matter what happens. It's a simple thought, right? A very patriarchal, deeply patriarchal thought, which that young woman perhaps got from the books she read, some nonsensical serial she watched. And then that's it. She decides that if it's him, then okay. If it's not him, then it has to be the end of her life. So what he told me just struck me that in very rare cases, even if parents are progressive and they're asking, the kids are stuck in the past. So I don't know. I feel like it's a vortex that we are stuck in.
I mean, I think we should, this might be a very unpopular opinion, but here's what people, old, young, need to understand. Marriage is not a one-way prison. It could make your life, it could keep you very happy, but it could also make you equally miserable. So if at some point, either of you, both of you decide that it's not working, please look at walking away than making you, everybody around you, yourself, kids, everybody miserable.
Or killing someone.
Or, of course, and killing someone. But since we're doing last thoughts, Dhanya, I've seen a lot of nonsensical statements, especially from people, political leaders even. Somebody even said that we should rethink if kids should go as far for honeymoon. We should think of whether they should go to Meghalaya for honeymoon. I mean, lesser is said about that, the better. But what pattern I saw is there is clamor for reduced freedom, particularly for women. These cases should in fact push the narrative that women should be given more freedom and not the conversation in the other direction. That's what I want to end this with.
Yeah, Dhanya, I just want to leave with a passing comment that, younger generations are not better off are not very progressive than what the elder generation are. There are many who continue the same notions of patriarchy, caste, and be in the strangleholds of all that old notions. So so I don't expect them to be any better. But these are just not patriarchy acting on people, but it's also it's also there is matters of heart and sentiment sometimes that people don't want to get out of marriage. People of our generation maybe who have seen SRK movies, the early SRK movies, not the later versions, and have grown up, where he says "Pyar ek baar hota hai, shadi ek baar hota hai," and all that crap. There are people who will still subscribe to that and believe that, that kind of romantic novels and ideas of romance and marriage and all of that might stay on in some people. So we cannot completely, bifurcate and dissect and understand the reasons of why people stay in marriage and why people don't get out when there is abuse and when there is a lack of respect or lack of love in those marriages. So, I don't think that those kind of questions can be answered easily. But as you said, crime is not the way out of this. There are 100 other better ways to get out of it. Yes.
Yeah, 100 other ways, but unfortunately not. There's one way to get out of it. And I'm saying this all sincerity. Please stop watching TV serials.
Oh, yeah.
I have just been with a crowd of people recently where I realized that everybody talks like they're in a TV serial. The dialogues that come, I feel like it just puts you back into a box which is so ancient and you're not able to come out of it.
I want to say this. People say, "Oh, it's just entertainment," but I think you're without knowing, taking the
Inhaling
words,
this, yeah.
the dialogues, the thought process, everything. What you see shapes how you think.
Rohin, thank you very much for joining us here at South Central.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so this week I'm going to read out 3 or 4 interesting letters. One of them is very interesting, but because I did not get time to email that person and ask whether we can mention their name, I'm going to just say no name. And one is, of course, anonymous. So the first letter, which I will not disclose who wrote, said that, "Very glad that you ladies address the kind of puny and cruel shadow ban on Chinmayi for speaking up." That's our last episode where Chinmayi, the singer, had joined us. "In light of this and many such gruesome, horrendous events you come across every day as journalists, I would like to know how you women cope up with this sheer level of hopelessness. To a 25-year-old like me," not me, him, the person who wrote, "our country is infested with bribing bureaucrats, delayed and denied justice, lack of care for human lives, evident from pothole-filled roads to police officers handling POXO cases for the accused, high taxes, go the media, joblessness, and every other misery in this country. It's a very, very hopeless situation to even comprehend. And the more you dig and more you learn on how our history is rigged, how naive people are, it's an unending black hole of bad things." Now, there are more paragraphs on the bad things. After that, he or she asks, "My question for you women, Leena, Pooja, what drives you lot? No matter wherever you look in this state of affairs, it is pathetic in this country. Yet you guys keep asking for 500 rupees from a country of people who are innately cheap in nature. And yet you successfully run a media organization from there, keeping alive truth and honest journalism. See, 500 rupees. I don't think people are innately cheap. They just don't want to spend for news.
Yeah.
Because people think they can spend for popcorn, ice cream, movies, clothes, coffee, croissants, everything, but they will just not spend on news because they feel news has to be free. That's a thought that you have to eliminate from your mind. You are ready to pay for your doctor. You are ready to pay for your lawyer. Also pay for your journalist so that they can do the job better for you. Anyway, he goes on. Of course, you lot have kids as well. Not me.
But I do deserve money just because I don't have kids.
No, that's not the point. He said, of course, you have kids as well. Why not take bribe from a nice politician and just settle with the business visa for their sake? Everybody is selfish in India. The selfishness and herd lifestyle is inculcated from schooling itself. Yet you lot do this work with more than a spoon of selflessness. Just how and why? I would love to hear so that I can learn. Thanks for staying so long to read this page. If you do finish this rant, just know it's a question I can't get around." Leena, you have anything to say? Why not take a business visa, some visa and go abroad, Leena?
No, we have all tried all these things, but it's just that I think
No,
we have a
I
heart.
haven't. I have not gone anywhere. No. And I have no plans to, at least now.
So I'll be honest, I have tried to, diverge out of journalism long back when it became a threat to my existence, when I figured that I couldn't continue doing journalism in India. And I've tried, but it's just that I felt suffocated wherever I went because this is your true calling. And I think for a lot of journalists, that is true, that this is what keeps us alive, that every day morning when we get out of bed, that we feel like we need to exist is when we some way is part of this journalism industry and do some honest journalism or make an effort to help out, at least, honest journalism survive in some way or the other. So I think, but there is a difference between people like Pooja and I see that they're very passionate and hopeful about journalism, which I'm not. I think I have this doom and hopelessness lingering around me, which I don't get from Dhanya at all. And I think everyone around Dhanya also says this.
I'm that person you call toxic positive, right?
Toxic
positivity. In fact,
positivity.
one of our reporters even suggested a story based on my character, saying there are toxic positive people. But I just want to add that Leena said at one point she thought it's untenable for her to be a journalist. That's not because of her getting low pay or not having a job. She did a cracker of a profile in 2019 for the Caravan. It's called How Pragya Singh Thakur, Sunil Joshi and Aseem Anand Plan the Samjhauta Express Blast. This was a investigation never before like in India, and Leena was the author of this report, and that got her into a lot of trouble, and she had to almost go underground for a year, which is the reason why she thought journalism is not untenable. So the person you are listening to on South Central every week is one of India's top investigative journalists. Why don't you take a bribe from a politician? That's the easy way out, right? Like people are ready to offer money. The first bribe offer I got was I went to cover this, cataract surgery, which was organized camp, which was organized by some organization. And when I was leaving my second job in Delhi, nobody gave me any bribe for 1 year. My first job was in Delhi. Then I came to Chennai. They gave me this cover. So they called it the cover. And I opened, it was 500 rupees inside. I'm like, why are you giving me this? He said, no, cover kudupon, like for everybody. I gave back the cover. Then it just happened to be twice after that where I have been offered bribes.
For me, it was 2.5 lakh rupees. And mind you, this was, I think, 2014 or 15.
I'm very sad. I got 500 and she got an offer of 2.5 lakhs. Okay.
Yeah. It was for a story on mining, granite mining. I was doing the story anyway because the documents I had were solid. And it was a great story visually and otherwise to do. Unfortunately, somebody who was connected to the case called and said, we've given your share of it to a person who had connected me to the source. And I didn't know how to react. I was shivering. I was so scared. I said, no. I do it based on the merit of the case. He said, but we've already given it. So I didn't take it from that person. I'm guessing the middle person got that money. But just on the point of why we do what we do. I have worked in places that call themselves news organizations that do take favors from politicians. I know how suffocating it is. So if it ever comes to that, we do have other skills. I'd rather walk away than compromise and do journalism.
Yeah, I'm going to start a pet shelter for cats. That's my next, career
You'll not
option.
make any money with it.
That's okay. No, but really, just the answer to this question is taking bribes was never an option. I mean, unfortunately, there are news organizations which may do that or people who may do it, but not for us. Yeah. Okay. Next, Shyamala James. Hi, Dhanya. Thank you for sharing this powerful episode of South Central. Both segments were deeply compelling. Your conversation with Nandini Chandrasekhar on the Chinnaswamy stampede raised urgent questions about accountability, and Chinmayi's reflections were incredibly moving. It's heartening to see her voice and talent finally being recognized again. I'm also excited about the upcoming subscriber meet in Chennai. On June 18th, that subscriber meet is over. We had quite a few subscribers turn up. Thank you for that. And do turn up for the next one. Okay, we have a letter from someone anonymous. Says, just want to say, although I'm not a subscriber, I like listening to South Central episodes and I follow TNM's work closely. The reason I'm not a subscriber is because I find your work a bit random. Maybe you do it because you make sure that you still have the support of your current subscribers, or maybe that's the only way to not be attacked as anti-national. Either way, I find myself not being able to support your work. For example, I found your discussion on art versus artist a bit pointless, and I thought this very same topic could have been simply focused on good versus bad art. Those are very different topics. We had no intention of discussing good versus bad art.
And who are we to say what's good and what's bad art?
I also found your coverage of Operation Sindoor uncomfortable, although it was one of the few decent coverages, because of your repeated implicit justifications of the military response of the Indian state. I found your criticism was limited to only the lack of adequate protection to people in border regions. Oh, so this letter is saying that we are not critical enough.
Yeah.
That's why we're a bit random.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think an editorial choice could have been made to not have to mention, for example, that the people in the border region support the Indian military attacks on Pakistani forces, even as they expect better protection and care in the aftermath of the attacks. I think there is an important difference here between simply relaying the experiences of people and subtly supporting national interests.
But that was true. And it is our job to report as we see it.
Yeah. And I don't know. See, sometimes we are a bit reticent about certain topics simply because we are not the experts in that, right? For example, if it's to do with certain southern states, we will say things with more authority. We'll say things with more power and force. I think that reticence come from that. We don't want to be caught wrong. We don't want to be caught saying things which are not factually right. Nothing else. I mean, you may find our coverage random, but in my mind, it's very clear. We are a very small organization. We just have 1 or 2 reporters in every state. We are sometimes competing with newspapers which have 100 people in one state alone. So we can't write about everything. We have to be random.
But Dhanya, just one more point here. There isn't one kind of enemy in the society or one evil, one malice that we're fighting. So we can't just say we're going after communal forces, for example. We also have to go after people who are casteist. We have to go after people who are, like in this case, art versus artist was also a discussion where we spoke about men who've committed crimes against women. Do we condone them? Do we continue indulging them? So there are multiple conversations to be had. All of them, in my mind, are important, which is why we can't be unidirectional.
Yeah. Okay. Next letter is from Badri. Badri says, "Hello TNM. In this email, I provide my suggestions on A, how to address the echo chamber accusation you receive from subscribers, and B, not being dependent only on current affairs." So he says, DNM does not need a controversy involving Kamal Hassan to invite people of eminence such as Professor Purushottama Billimale for discussion. Every once in a while, say once a month, you must include one section in South Central dedicated to issues of public interest that are not triggered by recent news or controversy.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll definitely look at that. Echo chamber. I endorse the view of some of the subscribers that South Central has been an echo chamber of panelists, though there are exceptions. To be fair, it is hard to have a courteous but counter-viewing voice in the panel, given everyone has subscribed to the toxic left-wing versus right framework. Okay, then he goes on to give, it's a very precious email. I will send it to both Leena and Pooja and Bhuvan, because he has given a lot of suggestions of names of people who we can include. Thank you very much for your effort, Badri. In fact, I was not aware of a few people that you have mentioned in the email. I will definitely try my best to call them on episodes. But on the issue of echo chambers, it's not, see, first thing, we don't invite politicians on South Central. It's the easiest thing out. Call 2 politicians, they will fight, and we can just butt in with the facts, right? We have to call experts. And I think in that, we have called pro-war people, we have called anti-war people. Should we call people who are meninist and not feminist? I disagree. I do not want their views, because I feel it's all over mainstream media. You put on TV and you are seeing, for example, in Malayalam, Rahul Ishwar, he's on every show possible. There should be some place where you are listening to facts, opinions which are from the other side and not shouted, right? That's the whole point. We can experiment. We did with Mohandas Pai, and most of you said, no, we didn't like the episode.
Yeah, that's true.
So when we are not an echo chamber, everybody has a problem with it.
But we are not an echo chamber. I'll tell you why.
Because I disagree with you a lot.
That too.
Yeah.
But when we called Rohin Bhatt, for example, we didn't know what his point of view is. I mean, if you're going to say that our bias is based on the kind of work he's done, then I can't say much. But we didn't ask him, what is your viewpoint? It so happened that he said what he said.
Yeah. No, we will definitely try to make sure that we have other viewpoints. I don't know how, but we will figure this out in the future.
Many times they don't want to come. What do we do then?
That's also true. When they hear our names, they shiver and they never turn up. Yeah. Okay. So recommendations, Pooja?
So I want to recommend this Netflix series called Department Q. It has Matthew Good in the lead. It's just 8 or 9 episodes and it's wonderful. It's based in Edinburgh, in Scotland. I have a second recommendation. It's something Dhanya already spoke of, but I have a special place in my heart for Lakshmi Priya. She is the words behind Let Me Explain, and she's a powerful, powerful writer. Every week, me and Megha, my producer, we read certain parts of what she's written and we're like, wow. So I urge you to go back and read, if you've not, her first Manosphere piece and the second one, which is now released. If you're not a subscriber, believe me, just these two pieces are worth your while. Become one right away.
Okay. And this week, I have with me a copy of Heartland. So I'm going to read that. But my two main recommendations are what I read on BBC. There is a beautiful piece on why sperm is still so mysterious. There's a huge amount that we don't understand. It's a science-based article, and I quite liked it. The second is from LRB. LRB this time has a beautiful essay on Joan Didion and her partner's parenthood, and I connected a lot, and especially because I'm a huge fan of her narrative writing and how she puts things down. So that's my second recommendation.
Since we have been talking about Keezhadi, I would want to recommend a book which is about civilization of India. So it's written by R. Balakrishnan, a former Odisha cadre IAS officer, and he is a known Indology expert. The name of the book is Journey of Civilization from Indus to Vaigai. It is published by Roja Mutaya Library, which is based out of Chennai. So please grab a copy and read if you're really interested in the Indus Valley civilization and what could have happened to the inhabitants of IVC after about 4,000, 5,000 years ago.
My favorite book, which I've been reading recently, is Bartha Nussbaum's The New Religious Intolerance, Overcoming the Politics of Fear in an Anxious Age.
So I've been on a spree recommending podcasts. My evil intention is that more people will go to Spotify. Then they will also like South Central. So remember to go like South Central. But everybody liked Call from a Killer, my last recommendation. Did you listen to it? You should. It's a really nice podcast. This time I want to recommend a podcast which is between Sam Altman and Chris Anderson. It's called OpenAI Sam Altman Talks ChatGPT, AI Agents and Super Intelligence. It's a TED 2025 talk. It's very interesting because Sam Altman actually confesses, I don't have any other word to use, that there are so many problems with AI, especially about crediting people for their work, and they do not have a solution yet. It's a really interesting podcast. Do listen to it. Okay, so we are done with recommendations for the week. Final reminder, take a subscription. Do your duty towards news and the News Minute and News Laundry. The QR code is right here or the links are in the description. Thank you to my producer, Bhuvan Malik. Thank you to production assistant, Ajay R. Thank you to Years of the Show. She's back on duty after taking leave from the show for 2 or 3 weeks. Maria Teresa Raju. Thank you to Jasim Ali, the editor of the show. And thank you to Yana, who does all our social media work for the News Minute. Thank you all for listening in.